Hey, what's happening, everyone? It is I, the man, the myth, the mustache, Tim here, and have I got a brand new video for you. Welcome to part 2 of What If Deku Had a Slime Quirk. Sit back and relax, because you guys are in for a treat. Now with that out of the way, let's get into the video, shall we? It was a new day in Japan. The bright ball of gas and flame that gave its incandescent brightness illuminated the sky. Shades of black turned to blue, revealing white marshmallow-like clouds that decorated the heavens. A perfect day for a certain youth to start his heroic journey. Standing in front of a large mirror, the juniper-haired boy smiled brightly as he adjusted his tie, the knot in a single large bundle around his neck, the ends of it hanging loosely to his abdomen. Sunlight slowly shone into the room, lighting up his image on the reflective surface. The excitable youth had been awake for hours at this point, his exhilaration alone fueling his small frame. The All Might alarm clock next to his bedside began to move and shake, shouting the hero's catchphrase in a repetitive cycle, pushing the dismissal lever on the disruptive gadget and making his way downstairs, only for Midoriya to be met by his mother, who had already prepared a small breakfast for the two. Soon after, the emerald-eyed boy began marching his way towards his academia, which he longed to be a part of for many years. His smile stretched from ear to ear, content to know he proved all of his adversaries wrong. He too could be a hero. Not even a certain blonde could deny it anymore. Within the classroom of Class 1A sat a familiar ash blonde, his legs lazily thrown over his seat, arms behind his head, his deathly glare directed out through the window. Not a single word was exchanged between the teen and his fellow students, his aura of destructive energy acting as a repellent to any interaction. "This has gotta be some kind of joke," thought the sloppily dressed blonde, his teeth grinding at the image of the greenette smiling, causing him to be more and more angry. To think that his childhood victim had not only got into the school of their dreams, but scored higher than him? It was an absurd notion, but no matter how unbelievable it was the reality of the situation. Heaving a heavy sigh, Bakugo threw his head back and attempted to cool down his temper, until a familiar broken voice caught his ear. The doors of the room slid open, revealing the green-haired boy speaking with a tall, bespectacled youth with navy blue hair. Bakugo's head jerked violently in the direction of the two boys, his anger beginning to overflow instantaneously. The memory of his humiliation when he was nothing but a toddler emerged to the forefront of his consciousness, the feelings of frustration and anger bringing him to his feet. Just as the chaotic blonde began approaching the wide-eyed teen, the rustling of fabrics distracted the entirety of the classroom. A large yellow object rolled its way into the room, forcing its way to a vertical stance. The zipper fell open, revealing a wild-haired man with deep bags under his tired eyes. The appearance of the black-haired man silenced the commotion that had been roaring in the background. Sliding out of the yellow sleeping bag, the strange adult cleared his throat and then sighed before speaking. "Great. It took you 8 seconds to get quiet. Time's limited. You kids are not rational," lectured the man in an exhausted voice, causing many of the high school freshmen to feel rather disheartened. Quickly, the standing teens ran to their seats in respect of the authority figure. "My name is Shota Aizawa, and I've been put in charge of you lot." The name of the man was recognized by Midoriya instantly, his eyes sparkling in admiration of the stealth hero, Eraserhead. He remained quiet, but his overly eager gaze made even the stone-faced man in front of the class uncomfortable. "Put these on and meet me at the courtyard." From the sleeping bag, Aizawa pulled a bunch of gym uniforms out for the students to wear. "And you, stop staring at me," Aizawa said towards Midoriya, who changed his color to a slight blue, with his body jiggling like gelatin in fear. The class quickly changed into their given uniforms and promptly made their way outside to their instructed location. The conglomerate of students assembled in a disorderly fashion, teens separating into groups getting to know their new classmates. Though apart from the group stood Bakugo, hands firmly in his pockets, a permanent look of annoyance resting on his face. Even though he looked away, Midoriya remained within his peripheral vision, causing him visible discomfort. "All right, brats, listen up," Aizawa said, his voice resonating with annoyance and disinterest. Their teacher's words prompted them to go quiet, though at the tail end of the group, Midoriya continued his chat with a purple-toned boy, unaware of the presence of their teacher. A swift elbow jabbed the greenette in the ribs, which caused him to yelp from the unexpected impact. Just then, he turned around to see the black-garbed man glaring intensely in his direction, causing the slimy youth and the pint-sized teen to quake in their place and grow silent. As I was saying, we are going to have a physical assessment test. Essentially, the same thing you've done for years in school. The announcement of a physical test caused many of the students to sigh in protest. The man's intense glare then silenced the group. Difference is, you'll be using your quirks. Manic laughter began coming from the grouping of students, causing the members of 1A to look in the direction of the disruptive sound. Bakugo had entered a manic laugh, his teeth bared in a massive smile that caused shivers to run up and down the spines of his classmates. "That's more like it!" shouted the ashen youth, swiftly removing his hands from his pockets to start blasting explosive from his palms in a show of dominance. Though as quickly as the eruptions of sweat began, they suddenly stopped. Aizawa's hair stood on end with his eyes glowing ruby red with a menacing scowl to complement it. The rowdy youth's cocky grin remained, even though his quirk had been nullified, though questions began arising from the group. One hand rose first, coming from a young girl with round cheeks and brown shoulder-length hair. "Excuse me, Mr. Aizawa, won't we miss orientation?" Uaraka asked, having had some prior knowledge of how the start of the school year should usually go, at least according to the school itinerary. Others joined in protest of missing additional activities that would involve getting more knowledge of their new educational facility. "I have free rein to teach this class as I see fit. If you have a problem with that, you're free to leave," replied the Eraser hero, his tone strict and nonchalant at the same time. The protesting teens began to simmer down as they continued to listen to their teacher. "There's not a lot of time, and we don't need to focus on useless things," said the black-garbed man, grabbing a softball from a pile and throwing it towards the distracted Midoriya. The ball hit him in the forehead, which immediately became concave due to the surface turning to slime. The unexpected impact gave Midoriya little time to react, sending him to the ground. The softball rolled off the indentation on his skull, which then bounced back and solidified. Others in the group then began to hold in their laughter, though the explosive blonde burst out in pure delight. "Seems you're useless," sighed Aizawa, as he picked up another ball and threw it towards the cackling blonde, who caught it instinctively. "What's the furthest you've ever thrown a ball during a physical assessment?" questioned the tired man, his indifference emanating from his words. "Heck, I don't know. 30 meters or so," replied Bakugo, as he stepped forward towards his teacher. "Great. Now try using your quirk," said the educator, as he gestured towards a circle in the dirt. The blonde followed and prepared himself to launch the softball. "Now you can do whatever you want. Just stay inside the circle," instructed Aizawa, as he stood back and held a small device in his palm. Bakugo gave a wicked smile as he reeled back and launched the softball at full strength. Right at the end of the throw, a massive explosion rocketed the ball into the sky, a shockwave lifting dirt and pushing some of the students back. After a few seconds, the gadget in Aizawa's hand flashed with a final score from the throw, signaling the distance traveled. 702.5 meters. Great. Upon hearing his score, Bakugo began cackling and teasing his classmates to dare attempt to surpass him, shooting deadly glares towards his childhood friend. The students began getting excited, brainstorming on how to use their quirks to perform optimally, although more than a few students did mention that this would be a fun experience, which caught the ire of Aizawa. "Fun, huh? How about we up the stakes? The person who finishes last overall." He paused as the students' faces began to change in fear of what was to come. "Will be expelled." The teens' eyes widened and fear began to overwhelm them completely. Cries of protest were silenced by simple hand gestures from Aizawa. Student after student went and took their turn at bat, throwing the ball utilizing their special abilities. A few students managed impressive scores. The creation quirk user, Momoya Yorozu, managed to surpass Bakugo by creating a cannon, and after her, the gravity quirk user managed an impossible score of infinity thanks to her unique gravity powers. In the end, the last one called was Midoriya, who was still sitting on the floor, muttering to himself while the others took their turns. "Hey, useless, you're up," Aizawa called, waving the boy over, and throwing a ball in his direction once more, this time being successfully caught. The green-haired boy stood staring at the ball in his palms, staring at it for around a minute, which began irritating his instructor. "Throw the ball or you fail," spat the man, anger lingering in his voice, which caused the youth to jiggle slightly, being somewhat destabilized. How do I? He paused before suddenly speaking up. Inspiration finally hit him. Oh, I got it now, shouted Midoriya. His smile beamed brightly. The palm that gripped the softball suddenly turned to slime, along with his forearm. Using his free hand, he began pulling back on the slime, forming a makeshift slingshot. Shaking from the tension built in his arm, he let out a loud yell as the ball shot like a bullet, blowing back air and knocking the green-haired boy over. The ball flew straight into the air, breaking through low-flying clouds, and disappearing from view. The entire class grew quiet, especially Bakugo, whose eyes twitched in frustration as the gadget in Aizawa's hand began to sound off. How'd I do? Asked Midoriya, who was still on the ground. His arm slowly shrank back to its normal length. 1,324.6 meters. The result left many students baffled. Their jaws hung open. Bakugo stared intently, his eyes and fingers twitching with a mix of anger and shock. "You the man, Midoriya!" shouted a purple boy as he ran up to his newly formed friend, which caused the others to cheer along after the initial surprise had passed. The rest of the assessments were rather uneventful, Midoriya faring decently in most activities, with the only exception being the grip test. Walking up to the machine, he was gestured forward by his classmates, while his teacher looked on, fully expecting the boy to fail. Gulping audibly, he placed his palms on the grips and quickly turned his palms to slime, squeezing as tight as his body would allow. The score remained at 0 the entire time he squeezed. Looking back at a smirking Aizawa, he smiled awkwardly. "No, this won't work," said the teen in defeat, until the machine began to spark and smoke, the score suddenly beginning to escalate randomly. A small explosion blasted a hole in the side of the machine, with a total score marked 9,999 kilograms. "Guessing that doesn't count, huh?" asked the boy, as he released the grip and began rubbing the back of his head in embarrassment. 0 points, said Aizawa, with a deadpan delivery, which caused Midoriya's head to drop in disappointment. At the end of the school day, the scores had been tallied, and Midoriya managed to be in the top 10 of his class. This gave him great pride, as he began smiling towards his short friend, who was crying heavily as he had ended up dead last. "Hey, it's okay, Mineta. I'm sure everything will be all right," Midoriya reassured the short-statured boy, patting him on the back, though this did little to calm the erratic teen. Aizawa called the students together once more, for what they believed was a public expulsion. The expressions on their faces were a mix of relief and sadness to the current situation. "I'm sorry to tell you that for the next 3 years, UA will run you through the ringer. That's plus ultra. Use your strength to overcome it all, so bring it. Class dismissed," announced the black-haired man as he prepared to walk away, giving his students a thumbs up. "But wasn't I supposed to be expelled?" shouted the boy with purple spheres in his head, his eyes still bursting with tears. "Oh, that was a logical ruse to get you all to perform your best," Aizawa said with a rather strange smile on his face, his veiny, tired eyes opening wide in the process. Collectively, the entirety of Class 1A breathed a sigh of relief, while Mineta cried louder as he jumped into Midoriya's arms, now crying for joy. The loud bell of UA signaled the end of the school day, the many first years walking in small groups as they began to disperse, leaving on the bus or with their families that waited at the gates. Midoriya said his goodbyes to his new friend Mineta and continued his way onto the streets to make his way home. "Snot Rocket!" The familiar voice of Bakugo reached the slightly exhausted Midoriya, who stopped dead in his tracks. You got lucky today. I'm gonna crush you the first chance I get," growled Bakugo, as he passed by Midoriya and shoulder-checked him, which caused the green-haired boy to drop his notebook. "Okay, see you tomorrow, Kacchan," yelled out the green-haired boy in a friendly tone while picking up his notebook, which caused the angry blonde to scream in frustration from a distance. The following morning, Class 1A was going through their usual morning chatter, until they were told their next course was Hero Studies, their first true class concentrated on their ambition, and the students talked amongst themselves, anxious of what would come next. Suddenly, the sliding door shot open, and a tall, instantly recognizable hero dashed inwards in a dynamic pose. "Walking through the door like a hero!" yelled All Might loudly, with a massive smile on his face that instantly lifted the spirits of any who were in its vicinity. The students cheered in excitement, especially Midoriya, who began to shift colors as his own smile reflected the hero's presence. "Yes, it is I, All Might, and I will be your Hero Studies instructor," The man began to flex and pose, showing off his impressive physique. He was dressed in a red costume with a flowing blue cape, his vintage Silver Age costume. Today, we'll be performing battle trials. But first, if you're going to be heroes, you gotta dress like heroes, shouted the man as he gestured towards personalized briefcases with the names of each student. Inside will be the costumes you all commissioned when applying to UA. Now change up, and let's all meet up at Ground Beta. All Might concluded with a hearty laugh as he exited the room. The students cheered and quickly changed into their personally designed hero costumes, some with intricate detail, others with more questionable taste. The one thing could be said, this class looked a whole lot more like heroes. Midoriya nervously left the changing rooms in a short-sleeved bodysuit with a short popped-up collar, wearing matching tights that reached beneath sleek, simple boots, the colors light gray and green. Midoriya ran his fingers through his second skin that felt cool to the touch. A small trail of slime lingered on his fingertips. Within the briefcase, he found a note with specifications regarding his costume. The suit itself was made using fibers from Midoriya's hair that would in turn transform along with him, meaning his days of accidental nudity had finally come to an end. He jumped for joy before running behind his classmates that had already left for Ground Beta. Arriving after everyone had already been there, Midoriya stopped only to see a large screen with teams having been already assigned. Apologizing for his tardiness, the green-haired boy quickly ran forward to inspect the list, attempting to find his name. After a few minutes, he managed to locate himself on the screen. He had been assigned to team up with his new friend Mineta, though their opponents caused his heart to sink. It was Katsuki Bakugo and Tenya Ida. Slowly cranking his head backwards, Midoriya could see his tormentor with a wide evil grin, carefully causing explosives to go off in his palm. "I told you, I'd get you," growled the blonde, knowing his time for revenge had finally come, and he would savor this moment. Now that all the teams had been made and the matches had been scheduled, All Might began giving instructions on how the exercise would play out. There would be a villain team and a hero team. If the heroes managed to apprehend the villains and find the fake bomb, they would be victorious. But if the timer for the explosive were to reach its end, or if they defeat the heroes, the villains would win instead. Midoriya and Mineta locked eyes before gulping audibly, sighing as they knew what was to come would surely be hell. And that's our video for the day, so thank you all for watching. I hope you really enjoyed it. Before we leave, there's some housekeeping I want to do. First, We the Celestials has many other channels for your entertainment and viewing pleasures. All the information you'll need is right below in the description, so please feel free to check out all the other incredible projects and content our team creates. Secondly, on behalf of We the Celestials, I want to thank everyone involved in the production of today's awesome content. Their details will also be in the description. That's it for today's video, so thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a fantastic day. And as always, be kind to yourselves, be kind to others, and stay awesome. This has been Tim, Mustache out.